first of all, I have thoughts on Jordan Peterson, unfortunately, who really, I would say he's really attuned to the problems of Western society, but he really doesn't understand Eastern societies at all. And I think that's a problem with a lot of these modern philosophers and modern intellectuals and thinkers who place, Western Judeo-Christian civilization at the apex of development in history and write off every single other culture, be it African cultures that are so rich, Middle Eastern, Arab, Indian, basically the rest of the world. So what Jordan Peterson doesn't understand about patriarchy is how insidious it is and how it runs from every level of functioning, from actual state institutions all the way down to each individual family. Now, I'm going to draw back a little bit and say that, for example, in Islamic culture, in Islam, the Muslim religion, the ideal system, both of governance and of family, is that of a benevolent patriarch at the head. So the benevolent patriarch who rules the Muslim people, the ummah, as we say in Arabic. And then, you have your heads of state and you have your parliamentarians, or you have your majlis, your consensus groups, so on and so forth. They're all headed by benevolent patriarchs who are working for the best interest of everybody. They're not working selfishly. They're not working to, further their own interests, but to further the interests of all citizens, including men and women. And this goes all the way down to each individual family, where the head of each family is meant to be a benevolent patriarch who applies the rules and limits that the religion teaches us, that we learn from our culture, but only in the most gentle and humanistic of ways. Let's put it that way. So this is the ideal patriarchy. This is the imagined patriarchy. And let's say the one that we aspire to when we're thinking of patriarchy, but which we really rarely actually reach. I mean, there's of course there's the imagined matriarchy to the imagined matrilineal societies. And, you see their real world counterparts in, for example, Scandinavian countries where women are prime ministers, or so on and so forth. But what happens with patriarchy, unfortunately, and I think it tends to be human nature, that, people love to stay in power. Okay. The problem is power. And the problem is, what do you do to retain power and control? You often have to become punitive because you can't let it go. You can't say, well, I decided this, but my wife decided something else, and my daughter decided something else, and I'm here to advise and support, but let them still make their own decisions. No, this doesn't happen. Suddenly you've got the patriarch going, they're not listening to me, they're not obeying me. And then the ego gets involved, and then the patriarch turns to maybe sort of harsher measures. Let us not forget that in these traditional societies, the man of the family is the provider and the breadwinner. And having that economic power means a lot of social power, a lot of family power, especially then when you consider the pressure that you get on women. Don't go to work, stay home and raise the children. Well, that's great. That's fine. And I mean, I've even heard people I don't know if Jordan Peterson says this out loud, but they say that life was better when dad was out working, mom was raising the kids came out great, and everybody was happy, 1950s, what have you, right? Regardless of the fact of economic reality that we need 2 incomes today, kids need this, kids need that. Okay, so the women are raised then to be dependent on the men financially. A woman can't walk out of a marriage that isn't serving her needs. Let's not even go to an abusive marriage or a violent marriage, but a marriage where she's not happy, she's not an equal partner, she's not, her needs and her voice is not considered, but she hasn't got the wherewithal to walk out. Why? She's not earning. She hasn't been maybe she never got a career, or she had one and she hasn't been in the job market for 20 years. So now her skills are obsolete. She doesn't know how to drive, for example. I mean, I know that's impossible in America. Everybody drives, but many parts of the world where women can't drive, they don't have control of the family car. People can only afford a motorbike, and women don't really drive motorbikes around in public, right? So you have all of a sudden a man who's got all the power in his hands, and the women and daughters are fighting, or they have to struggle very hard to correct that imbalance of power. That is what patriarchy really looks like.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So in your estimation, it's almost just like, it's kind of like that failed attempt of communism in a certain sense. And don't worry, I'm not putting words in here. I'm not saying you like communism or anything like this, but there's
no, I'm not a specialist in communism. I'm really not well versed in how communism failed and what happened and what didn't happen.
According to the West, let's just put it there, since these aren't going to be my words. The idea, obviously, behind communism is that, the state will take care of everything, and this kind of socialist also endeavor, right? And we aspire that everyone will be happy and things will be spread out perfectly. And in the same sense, you're saying that we have this, or at least the aspiration in a patriarchy with a benevolent patriarch who is hopefully just going to provide everything perfectly and equally, and all of this. It seems like it's almost human nature that we have this innate urge to believe in the best and to believe in this positive ideal, and we're always searching for a utopia, which is a good and a bad thing, right? That we have an aspiration to something better than where we are. Yet, it's still yet to be seen if we can have heaven on earth, and to have the best of all the qualities that we see within us. I like to believe that we can, that it's going to take massive shifts in mentality and massive shifts in where we focus, where where men and women are putting their focus. I think there's always a balancing act, right? That's going on between the world and in everyone, just in life in general. And so I find that interesting. But yeah, just to go back to your estimation of it, it's basically essentially to say that we had this attempt at this patriarchal society, but it's horribly flawed due to the fact that, power corrupts, and and we aren't going to probably have that type of balance in the same system that we're in if we just keep going. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how are we going to? How is this going to change unless? What is a non-patriarchal, non-matriarchal society look like?
That's such a good question that I'm going to have to think about it. But I just want to go back to what you said, that, we are always looking for the ideal. And I think it's so important that we do look for ideals and we have the image of the ideal in our mind. But I think it's really important to understand that society, humanity, it's never pass or fail. Do you know what I mean? It's never like either we succeeded 100% or we failed 100%. It's always stages of evolution. It's always, a certain amount of success, a certain amount of fail. Although I think that any place where, there are women being harmed or there are girls being harmed, that's a fail to begin with. And in that sense, every country and every society fails.